Ariel lived with her parents in Prattville, Alabama. She had just enrolled into college in Texas and was looking for a place to rent. Ariel's aunt and uncle lived in Austin, Texas. They didn't have any children of their own, and when they heard Ariel was moving to their town, they insisted that she stay at their place while she studied there. Ariel loved Uncle Shawn and Aunt Cynthia. They were great people. Uncle Shawn had deep regards for the young girl, and Aunt Cynthia had always been kind to Ariel. Ariel thought it was quite an opportunity she had gotten. She didn't have to spend on renting a room, and her aunt and uncle would pretty much take care of all her other needs. Ariel laughed to herself in embarrassment every time she would remember having snuck into Aunt Cynthia's room to pull out a few bucks from her purse. Ariel would sneak out of the house after that and spend a few hours meeting up with a few college buddies at a club. At first, it was now and then, but it soon became something Ariel would do just to pass free time. It wasn't like she was stealing wads of bills out of Aunt Cynthia's safe, so she thought it was all right. There was a man who lived next door. His house was about a 10-minute walk from Aunt Cynthia's house. His name was Jack. He was Uncle Shawn's friend. He had often seen Ariel sneak out of the house, but he never said anything. "Ariel, where are you headed off to at this hour?" "Oh, nowhere, Uncle Jack. Just taking a small walk before going in for the night. I remember when I was your age. It's all right. Go out, have fun, but be safe." Although her uncle and aunt were always nice to her, they themselves got into the occasional fights that either Ariel would see with her own eyes or at least overhear. Ariel would hear Uncle Shawn go on and on yelling at Aunt Cynthia that he couldn't figure how the money didn't add up. Other times she would overhear about matters between the couple that she couldn't really understand. Usually the morning after Ariel had gone to the club, she would stay out in the backyard and spend some time there. Uncle Jack had a dog that would be roaming around in his backyard. It would sometimes leap over the fence and be seen roaming around Aunt Cynthia's house. Oftentimes, Ariel would peer over the fence onto Uncle Jack's house and pat the dog and play fetch with it. She would still overhear the shouts from her aunt's house. "I don't want to hear anything. Where were you for so long?" "I told you I went out to run some errands." "I'm warning you, Cynthia, you better not lie to me. It doesn't take this long to get home from the store." "What are you hiding from me?" "Back off, Shawn. You think just because you're a man you can treat me like that?" "Cynthia, you're crossing the line." Sometimes the fights would be limited to a few shouts and some curses, but sometimes it would get out of hand. Uncle Shawn would sometimes get so enraged he would charge at Aunt Cynthia. He wouldn't spare her any mercy, but Aunt Cynthia was no woman to mess with. She was strong, and she would have her stand in the fight as well. Most of the times, she would end up intimidating Uncle Shawn. He would have to think twice before the next time he opened his mouth. Most of the time, Ariel would watch Uncle Shawn barge out the door and out the fence. Ariel would be anxious when the fights would start. She knew what she did, and she even thought Aunt Cynthia had seen her. But Aunt Cynthia had never confronted her. "Aunt Cynthia, where is Uncle Shawn going?" "He's probably hopping off to Jack's place. This is what he always does. He fights with me and then goes running off to stay at his friend's house." Uncle Shawn stomped all the way down towards Uncle Jack's house. He began banging on the door until Uncle Jack opened up and let him in. "I don't know how I'll hold in all the rage one of these days, Jack. Cynthia always goes over the line. Why don't you just leave that woman? It's been so many years and she hasn't even been able to give you a child." "Jack, every time I think about it, I always remember the first time we met. She was my high school sweetheart." Ariel often felt a little uneasy among the tension in the house, and her Aunt Cynthia may have sensed that Ariel wasn't too comfortable. One day, Aunt Cynthia called Ariel to her room. "There is a trailer out at the back. You can move in there if you wish. You'll have all the privacy you need. You can even bring in your college friends." Aunt Cynthia happily searched through her closets for the keys to the trailer and handed it to Ariel. But then she warned, "But Ariel, now that you're going to college, you better be sure to stay away from womanizers, like your uncle's friend Jack. Beware of men like him." Ariel remembered the few times that Uncle Jack had seen her outside. Was he coincidentally there, or had he been watching her? Whatever the case was, Ariel was excited more than ever about the privacy she would get. But there was one thing she still couldn't escape from: the constant fights. It was one of these days that Ariel came back home from college. She slipped into the backyard and opened the trailer door. It still hadn't been cleaned out. Just a few days back, she had managed to clear up whatever extra furniture had been laying in there and made some space to sleep. It was still dusty and rusty and needed repair. It was at night that Ariel was overhearing a rather brutal fight going on in the house. Ariel was tired from the busy day outside, and she laid down in the trailer bunk and dozed off. The next morning, Ariel got out of the trailer and planned to go inside to get Aunt Cynthia to whip her up some pancakes. When Ariel walked through the door and sat down at the kitchen table, she soon realized that Uncle Shawn wasn't home. "Where is Uncle Shawn?" Aunt Cynthia shrugged and said, "He finally left me." Hearing the news, Ariel felt a little guilty at first, but she knew Aunt Cynthia and Uncle Shawn fought over various things. If it was just the money, Aunt Cynthia would have caught hold of her by now. At first, Ariel missed her uncle. Uncle Shawn always took special care of her, always asking her if she was okay or if she needed anything. But soon, without her uncle, things at the house seemed to get better for the two women. Ariel and her aunt cooked together, they went out and shopped together. Ariel would suggest a dress for her aunt, and her aunt would suggest one for her. And during this whole time, Ariel really got to know her aunt. She was a cheerful, fun-loving lady. But there was one thing that began to bother Ariel. The trailer had yet to be cleaned out, and Ariel began to smell a bad odor in there. She complained about it to her aunt, but Aunt Cynthia only said that it was because it had been locked up for years now. "Don't worry about it. It's probably because the raccoons or possums nested there. I'll clean it out for you." But it was as if Aunt Cynthia could barely find the time to come clear out the things and wash down the trailer. After about 2 weeks, the smell had increased, and Ariel was having a hard time ignoring it. She came into the house and called Aunt Cynthia. "Aunt Cynthia, the stench is just awful in there. When are you going to clean it out for me?" "We'll do it soon, I promise. It's nothing big, it's just the wild animals out in the backyard." "But Aunt Cynthia, the smell is just building up. I thought it would go away by now." Aunt Cynthia shrugged, and she handed me an air freshener. "Take this, go spray up that trailer good. The smell will be gone in no time." Ariel tried to follow Aunt Cynthia's advice, but the air freshener only seemed to make the stench even more stronger than before. Ariel decided to just leave it be. Aunt Cynthia would eventually find time to come. She just had to manage these few more days. It was during this time that Ariel began to have dreams. She would get into her bunk, obviously feeling uneasy from the putrid odor, and try to sleep, only to wake up, sweating and anxious in the middle of the night. In the awful dreams, she saw her uncle standing by her feet. He was looking pale and his eyes were baggy. He had a gloomy look on his face, and he just stood there by the edge of Ariel's bunk. After a few nights of experiencing the same awful dreams, Ariel spoke to her aunt about it. Aunt Cynthia had frozen the moment she heard it, but then she just shook it off. "You're just experiencing separation anxiety since you started living on your own in there." Ariel went out into the backyard. She just wanted to stop thinking about the horrible dreams, and most of all, she wanted to get rid of that smell. She saw Uncle Jack's dog jumping on the other side of the fence. The dog had a ball in its mouth and looked like it wanted to play fetch. Before Ariel could reach there, the dog jumped on her side of the fence and began licking her. "All right, boy, go fetch." Ariel took the ball and threw it out into the backyard. Unfortunately, it rolled all the way under the trailer. Ariel watched the dog swoop into a hole, and soon it came out, but without the ball. It was yelping as if it had been hit by something. Ariel bent over and crawled under the trailer. She could see the ball in sight, but it had rolled next to something wrapped in a tarp. Ariel tried to pull it. The flap fell to the ground. and what Ariel saw horrified her to her bone. She was staring at Uncle Shawn. His milky blue eyes were wide open and speckled with blood. Ariel started screaming. She backed out and raced after the dog until she reached Uncle Jack's house. She knocked desperately on the door. It all made sense to her now. The constant fights, the sudden smell, the nightmares. Uncle Shawn had been trying to communicate with her. Uncle Jack opened the door. "What happened, Ariel? What's wrong?" Ariel told him all that she had seen. Uncle Jack was silent at first, but then he smiled and shook his head. Aunt Cynthia came from inside and stood beside Uncle Jack. They said, "We knew you would be trouble." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.